ئامادەبانی بەڕێز بەخێربێن بۆ دووەمین ڕۆژی کۆڕبەندی پەروەردەیی لە کوردستان کۆتا پانێڵمان بە زمانی ئینگلیزی دەبێت بەڕێزان بۆیە داوا لە بەڕێستانەکەین ئەگەر هەر پرسیارێکیان سەرنج و تێبینیەک هەبوو لە ڕێی QR کۆدەکەوە پرسیارەکانتان بکەن لە دوا کۆتایی پانێڵەکە دەتوانین جواب و سەرنجی پرسیارەکان وەڵام دێنەوە. Your Excellency, the Minister of Education, Dr. Alan Hamad Saeed, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, welcome to the 7th panel of the second date of Kurdistan Education Forum. This panel topic is exploring student readiness and competencies for college and workplace in the modern world. Our guests of the panel are Dr. Randall Rhodes, the President of American University of The Hague. Dr. Randall leads academic planning, development, assessment, and implementation, which is essential for fostering a student-centered learning environment. And our second guest is Professor Keith Sharp, President of University of Kurdistan in Hawler. Professor Keith holds PhD in sociology at the University of Edinburgh and baccalaureate at Society in London School Economics and Political Science. And the third guest is Dr. Tony Degazon, the Regional Manager for the STI Guild Groups. Dr. Tony leading operations and projects across the Middle East, North Africa, and Europe. He is the responsible for over 400 educational institutes from K-12 to higher education. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, I would like to kindly remind you to use the QR code if you have any question. Going back to the topic of the panel and starting with facts and data behind. UNICEF, with support of many ministries like Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, conducted a multiple indicator cluster survey, and the results showed that related to education, the enrollment rate for primary education is above 90%, including KRI and Kurdistan. However, this enrollment rate reduced to 50%, 50 to 60% in the lower secondary and goes down to 35% in higher education, which means that out of 100, only 35% may have the opportunity to enroll or get the chance to continue with the college. To know the reason behind this, UNICEF, in cooperation with the Ministry of Education and Planning Department, conducted a comprehensive survey for Back to Learning campaign in KRI in 2023-2024. The results showed that the biggest reason behind the dropout is not related to the economic or poverty, while some results, or the higher result, is related to the learning difficulties. And when we explore those, we find that there are some challenges and issues behind delivering the knowledge from the teachers to students to cope with the modern world. As universities in Kurdistan are working on enhancing their academic programs, they must address the growth needs for integrating practical skills like digital literacy, problem solving, and effective communication. With this background, to explore the student readiness and competencies for the college, I would like to start with Dr. Tony and focusing on improving skills for the future. From your perspective, what strategies can be employed to continuously improve student skills according to evolving labor markets, and how does admissions policy impact these efforts to students in the future success? The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's a real pleasure to be here today to address such a distinguished group of people. So thank you very much indeed for the invitation. It's a question which unfortunately is a challenge right across the areas that I operate in. So I work across Middle East, Europe, and North Africa, and even now I support East Asia. And everybody is having a challenge to ensure that people are work ready. Everybody's having a challenge to ensure that young people are able to work productively and effectively after they leave their education. It's not just about further education, it's not just about university, it's about leaving at any point from their high school. So the key thing is what skills support a productive work life. That is important, and I don't want to take away from the fact that education is a holistic support for developing a young person. But here we are talking today about skills which allow people to be economically productive. And the first thing, and the work that we've done quite extensively, is in this idea of, I mean, people talk about it, 21st century skills. People talk about 21st century skills. They try to map out the domains of those skills, be it kind of global leaders or resilient learners, this type of domains. When they look at creativity, entrepreneurship, digital fluency, financial literacy, working with others, entrepreneurship, you know, the list is endless. But the key thing is really to understand how that is actually delivered. The key thing is understand how teachers engage, understand what industry is requiring, and how they can reflect that into their teaching. And ultimately, that's one of the big challenges, how you bake that into any type of delivery model. The best practice that we've seen, the practice that actually makes a difference, is when teachers fully understand how to integrate these types of important skills into the learning and make it a priority. And not just in delivery, but also in assessment. So how do you assess, how do you, review progress of a young person? Some of the best practice that we see is that where learning is individualized, where performance is individualized, and the systems and the technology allows us to understand where every individual is at any one point in time in respects to their literacy, their soft skills, their academic performance. And that allows intervention at very critical points in time. And I remember the work we've done some work in the UK, obviously, on how formative assessment is mapped for people from primary school right through to secondary school, and how it has been a big tool for teachers to understand when intervention is required. So this idea of personalized learning, this idea of integrating skills which are deemed to be, at that point in time, important for future life. And you can see already how technology is impacting the way the work is. And unfortunately, this is something which is increasing with, as we all know, AI that's coming into our lives and making a huge difference. So I think reality is, it comes down to how it's a multifaceted approach about ultimately baking in those skills in the way that we deliver our learning. So one of the aspects of that, and we talk about work, and the good practice that I see across the region is really the connection with industry and how you bring industry into your education. So where you have industry coming in and supporting schools, further education, and universities, we see great practice there where people become more industry-led in respects to the way that these programs are developed. And that's a critical point, isn't it, if you think about it, to ensure that your curriculum and your assessment is up to date, is leading edge, does meet industry demands. So that is good practice that we see. We're doing some great work at the moment in Saudi Arabia. I mean, they have a large amount of universities there, but they have 300,000 young people with degrees who are unemployed. So that's obviously not meeting industry needs. So the work there is to ensure that the curriculum reflects exactly what is required in the market. And that's a tough ask when you don't have the proper frameworks to work from, the proper, ways of working with labour market intelligence that comes through, is supported through things like sector skills councils that impacts curriculum where it matters. And the speed of that is needing to happen very quickly. So I think in summation, you need to connect with the world of work. We need great teachers doing great things in classrooms. We need people to understand the types of skills which are really relevant and make a difference in people's lives. And we need that to be integrated into delivery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tony. A follow-up question quickly regarding what you have mentioned. Shall we say that Ministry of Education and Ministry of Higher Education should conduct a kind of markets needs assessment to understand what are the job markets required to be reflected in the industrial schools to prepare the children or the students for the job market?
Yes, so the kind of systems that we see at work at the moment in different types of countries, we see the way that they're aligning their education system to understand the industry needs. And that does require a high-level framework. So when you talk about temperature testing, understanding what those requirements are, the structures are there in a framework. So they're regulated. They have the units. They have like in Saudi Arabia, they're setting up a skills unit, okay, in the ministry to understand the latest requirements for changing not just curriculum but the needs of assessment. So to give an example, there was a college I won't talk about in a particular country. When we looked at them, their curriculum was teaching fax and telex. Does anybody here remember fax and telex? Probably not relevant now, but that's what they were doing last year. So you can see this is the kind of curriculum that we don't want to be doing. So this system is actually, it's a framework which connects the labour market, connects the world of work, and goes through into the curriculum. So that is an important cycle. Every single country has a different way of approaching that. I'm sure the ministers here would benefit from something like that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tony. We need to look at the current job market, not copy a test or an activity from different countries, because we really need to look at what is currently in Kurdistan and based on that to decide. Thank you very much for Dr. Tony. I would like to move to the next question about the assessing readiness. And my question will be to Dr. Randall. I will come back to you, Dr. The second question is about assessing readiness. How do universities evaluate the readiness of high school graduates and for college level and level education, and what are the most essential skills and competencies you look for in common students? Dr. Randall, the floor is yours.
Very much for the question. We've been speaking for the past couple days about the soft skills. So I don't think I need to repeat all of that about the critical thinking, the problem solving, innovation and creativity, the IT fluency, and so forth. But the issue is, as a university, I follow the admission guidelines of the Ministry of Higher Education. And until K through 12 starts developing a framework where all of these skill sets are being taught, and it doesn't start with high school, it has to be taught throughout the whole spectrum of K through 12. Not until the Ministry of Education implements that curriculum, students will never be ready for university in Kurdistan. My students are not ready for university when they come to my door. So I only use the high school scores as the barometer of acceptance, and then I have to do all the work. So about 75–80% of my students need to engage in the English preparation year. It is within that curriculum that I embed critical thinking and problem solving, innovation, creativity, public speaking, communication skills, presentation skills. So I have to develop that framework even before they get to the bachelor's courses. And then once they hit the bachelor's courses, those skill sets need to be infused across the whole curriculum. So therefore, they begin with a fluency after the first year, and then they develop the proficiency as appropriate to their disciplines, to their fields of study as they progress through year 2, year 3, year 4, and perhaps even year 5. So if universities don't take on the responsibility of ensuring the end product, then the workforce, the economy, the private sector is not going to develop in Kurdistan. So in terms of assessing readiness at the time of application, currently that does not exist. So therefore, we have to, as we said, align our academic programs to workforce expectations. We have to design courses that are more hands-on, practical, applied. Yesterday we heard about the polytechnic model, where 70% is hands-on projects, 30% is theoretical. Universities have to do the exact same thing. Universities need to be 70% applied, 30% theoretical as well. So therefore, the flipped classroom, experiential learning, every student required to do an internship, all of these elements of commercial projects, industry coming into the classroom, if that doesn't happen, then the graduates will not be able to contribute to the progress of the country. So one thing I have to add to all of that, this type of education is extremely expensive. Classes have to be smaller, there's more individualized instruction, labs have to be built to support all of these hands-on applications for all of the disciplines that are being taught within universities. And therefore, there is an issue of educational support in Kurdistan. So in K through 12, the multiple shifts, the buildings that are insufficient in order to provide 21st century technologies, teachers that are not equipped with innovative pedagogies. Across the board, whether it's K through 12 or university, money has to be invested if you want this type of outcomes. But this is very labor-intensive, resource-intensive to provide skill-based education that is experiential, that provides students with workforce skills.
Thank you very much, Dr. Thank you very much, Dr. Randall. Regarding the preparedness of the students, don't you think that when we are talking about behavior change, normally behavior change requires at least 10 to 20 years. Linking this to the behavior change in digital literacy for teachers, there is a gap between the alpha generation and teachers. How to create these linkages to deliver the knowledge better from the teachers who left behind related to the digitalization with the new alpha generation?
On the university level, I don't see a digital divide. Maybe on the K through 12, I cannot assess that situation. But on the university level, all faculty should have the digital skills to, for the classroom technologies, for the IT infrastructure, for learning management systems. That should be a prerequisite of hiring faculty at any university. If anything, I see the digital divide amongst the students who are coming into university because, as was said at a previous session, there are many students from rural areas or IDPs and refugees who do not have access to those types of technologies. So when they come to university, they need a little more assistance to catch up with their peers, for example, those who went to international private high schools. But faculty, student, I don't see that much of an issue, but within the student population, because of the diversity, the ethnic, religious, and socioeconomic diversity that exists in Kurdistan, that's where I see the digital divide.
Thank you very much. We move to Professor Keith, and the topic this time is soft skills development. And the question is, how do the institutions integrate the development of skills such as communication, teamwork, problem solving into academic experience?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for that. I think the first thing we need to think about there is the changing balance between subject content and the development of skills in universities. I think when we look back 20 or 30 years, the emphasis was almost completely on subject-specific skills. How do we teach engineering? How do we teach computer science? How do we teach English literature? And I think the nature of the economy is changing to such an extent that the balance between subject-specific knowledge and the skills that our graduates are going to need to survive in the modern world is changing. And I think this is a global trend that focusing on skills and generic abilities, irrespective of subject content, is something that universities around the world are having to look at. We talk about soft skills, and of course the nature of soft skills is changing. When I was thinking about this, and I was thinking what were the soft skills that I learned as a student, it was really very simple back then. We had authoritative sources of knowledge. We broadly understood the difference between things that were true and things that were not true. We broadly knew how to differentiate between those things. Now that's all changed in the modern world. So the sorts of skills that we might call soft skills that our students require today are infinitely more complex than the skills that they might have had 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, just take academic journals as one thing. When I was a student, you went into the library at your university, the journals were on the shelf, and they were all considered pretty much authoritative sources of information on a particular subject. Well, look at the world today. I mean, just take something like Wikipedia, which can be anything from a complete fiction to really quite a good summary of a particular topic. So these skills of disambiguation, of understanding the difference between different sources of information, how we discriminate from different sources, are the kinds of soft skills that we need for the future. So it's not just digital skills. I think most of our students have digital skills. I do agree with Randall that there is a divide socioeconomically, of course, but on the whole, students, if they don't have them when they come to university, they pretty quickly develop them. I think the issue is the new kinds of soft skills that citizens as a whole need to negotiate the digital world. So just social relationships, for example, are now mediated through social media. People are not what they seem anymore. Identities are fluid. Identities are crafted and constructed. And these are the things that really worry me. Are our young people today prepared for that infinitely more complex world, both personally and professionally, that they're moving into?
Thank you very much, Professor Keith. I would like to go back to Dr. Tony, asking about career services and employability. How do the career service support students transitioning from the academic life to workforce? And what unique approaches or resources are provided to enhance employability and careers readiness? The floor is yours.
I think it's a fact that when you look into the future, we can't actually predict what jobs will be there. So the kind of career advice about jobs which we don't know are coming is rather difficult. So I guess saying that, obviously there is a lot of focus around ensuring that people have the right types of information, the right experiences, the right opportunities to engage with the kind of opportunities in work and in careers that people can achieve. You know, I think universities have looked at the more traditional lines, lawyer, doctor, teacher, architect, civil engineer. We know these, but what we don't know are these things that are coming out very quick from AI and actually just working remotely on through the internet. Influencers. I'm not an influencer. I'm not too sure if my colleagues are influencers, but you know, there's a huge industry out there, a huge gaming industry, even which I'm not a part of, which are making people a living. So these kind of opportunities need to be expanded in the way that we, I suppose, introduce in a safe way to young people. And I know it is a difficult thing to try to look into the future and understand what the opportunities are, but you have to start from somewhere. I guess as I obviously work for City and Guilds, our focus is always to integrate education with industry. So there's a pathway into work, and from that point you can provide those conversations, you can expand people's minds, you can explore different opportunities that people can understand so they can make the right types of decisions in the kind of skills that they wish to have to be productive. And I do agree, I actually don't think it's subject specific these days. Most industries that I work with want fresh graduates who just can turn up on time, do what they say, learn on the job, work within, you know, what the employer wishes to happen productively, and that's the baseline that people are looking for. And certainly in the region, that's what we get told of all the time. So certainly from a career advice point of view, where I see good practice, yes, in universities, in further education, in schools, there are people who are designated as career advisors, counsellors, people who understand not just the local industry, but what's happening in the world in general, who's able to give and support and mentor and coach young people into exploring areas, not trying to force them down a pathway into one. I remember many years ago when I was looking at the types of careers that I wanted to do, going into the library, doing a computer diagnosis and saying, you need to work in forestry. I didn't work in forestry. I became a teacher. But yeah, so I do think it's a bit of an art and science. I think it's a very difficult the thing to do, but one needs to be guided, one needs to have the right type of information, and I think it starts off with teachers and it kind of ends with universities who are preparing people for a particular job.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tony. One of the challenges that we are facing in the Kurdish community is all the parents would like to have their children doctors or engineers. So yeah. We end up with a situation like many of the children, they may not like that career path and they feel right. Somehow. Going back to Professor Keith regarding the technology and integration, with the rapid advancement of technology and the potential disappearance of several jobs, how are universities incorporating digital literacy and technological competencies into teaching methods, students' learning outcomes?
So I think just to comment on this last point, I think this is extremely relevant that of the culture here and in many other places is that if you can, you want to get your child into medical school. If you can't get them into medical school, you want them to be an architect. If you can't be an architect, you want to be an engineer of some kind. Unfortunately, my subject, sociology, is pretty far down the local hierarchy of subjects. But one of the things that I've noticed locally is that we have significant numbers of students studying subjects that they don't want to practice. This is true of medicine, this is true of architecture. They really want to do something else, but they've been pushed into these disciplines because of the cultural preference for these kinds of subjects. Related to that, it's important to realize that maybe 30 years ago, it was normal to enter a profession, to go through the careers process at school and university, to enter a profession and stay in that profession for the rest of your career. But we know that the graduates of today are likely to change their careers 5 or 6 or 7 times in the course of their lives. Increasingly, I meet medical graduates who are working in marketing, engineering graduates who are in banking or human resource management. So added to that, as Tony said, we don't know what the jobs are going to be like in 20 years from now. 20 years ago, jobs exist today that didn't exist then, and that's going to continue. So I think what it means is the technical skills that we teach our students are much more likely to be those related to agility, to adaptability, the ability to change, the ability to learn new things at quite a rapid pace. And this is all bound up as well with the identities of our graduates. They don't graduate and think, I'm a doctor, I will always be a doctor, that is the only thing that I can conceivably be. There is a reasonable chance that in 10 years' time, they won't be practicing as a doctor anymore. They might be doing something completely different that might not have even been envisaged. And I think this is something we have to really embrace. And it's back to that point about the relationship between the content, the subject content of knowledge, and the skills that will equip them for this rapidly changing world. They still need the subject knowledge, but they also need this agility and this adaptability, which is coming in the future. As I say, I worry much less about technical skills. When I see the students come in today, they are, I think the phrase is digital natives. They know how the digital world works. If I want to solve a problem with my phone or my computer, I just find somebody under 25, and the chances are they know how to deal with it. My 12-year-old grandson is a great source of information on how to do things on my iPhone. He knows more about it than I ever will. And that's just the way it is now with the environment in which people grow up. So I think that kind of preparation is just there, it's in the environment. But what we have to do is to equip our students with the understanding that the world of the future will be very different from the world of today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Keith. We move to the last question of this panel, directing this question to Dr. Randall regarding the curriculum and industry alignment. How have your universities adapted their curricula to better prepare students for the modern workplace, and how do industry partnerships shape these programs to meet labor market needs? Over to you.
AUK has professional advisory boards, industry advisory boards for every single academic program or college. They meet once a semester, review the curriculum, see student presentations, capstone projects, make recommendations on curriculum and courses, and start networking for internship and job possibilities. So getting industry into the classroom, adjuncts, they're part-time instructors, are from industry, that is the best way to make the connection. But I want to go in a completely different direction. And that is the first session that we had yesterday. And that deals with a university or any academic environment helping to build a nation. And that is an extremely important element that we did not discuss today. It's extremely important that the whole education spectrum creates good citizens with strong ethics, strong belief systems that can carry forth the local identity into the decades to come. And a university, whether it's through skill building to enable its graduates to create jobs, create businesses, or get existing jobs, everyone should be employed. We cannot argue that. But we also have to create through social responsibility, ethics training, through volunteerism, through community building. Our students need to get the sense of responsibility, not just for themselves, but also responsibility for each other. One of the most important aspects as an American university and our accreditation standards is the concept of access, diversity, and inclusion. So it's extremely important that our doors be open and that any student who is academically qualified be able to come to the university. We're very fortunate we have the capacity to take more students. Access is an American ideal. Everyone should be able to come through the doors. If they don't succeed, I'm kicking them out. You have no guarantee you're getting a diploma. You have no guarantee you're getting to the second year. But I'm going to give you access to the classrooms, and you're going to get the opportunity in order to help with the divides, the socioeconomic divides that we discussed before. Maybe a student from a village who never had great teachers in a great school comes to university and they blossom. No one ever knew that would have been a possibility. So it's extremely important to give opportunity that people can prove themselves when they're in a new academic environment. So therefore, universities need to be a place of acceptance, a place where people can exchange ideas. That is going to prepare them for the globalized world. Jobs today are no longer just in one government. You are not only going to change jobs 5 to 7 times during your career, but you will also perhaps end up in 3, 4, 5 different countries in the course of your professional life. So therefore, many of these aspects of diversity, listening to multiple perspectives, trying to navigate the divide of the genders, and everything else we have here, not just in Kurdistan, but in the Middle East and the larger world. These all have to be built in the curriculum, because that is how we're going to build a very strong generation. So, as I said, we have capacity. If any of you have grandsons, granddaughters, nieces and nephews, we have a booth out there. You can get admission information. But it's extremely important that education become the pathway for Kurdistan, and it needs the additional investment to get it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Randall, and thank you, dear panelists, for the valuable contribution. I would like to open the floor for audience for question and answer, but before I have some questions on the Slido, I would like to take from Ms. Sarah the question about how do you outcome the social stigma of vocational training rather than traditional university education. So this question is directed. I appreciate colleagues when you are writing the question directed to a relevant person. So Ms. Sarah, this question, Dr. Tony, the question is directed to you.
Yes. So the way that's been tackled in certain countries, they raise the level of professionalism and within a particular trade. So you have professional bodies that provide recognition of fantastic practice, and you become a member of that particular guild. Say that because it is City and Guilds after all. So the professional bodies play a big part in raising the esteem of a vocational body. I mean, in the UK, a plumber, you take 4 to 5 years, probably as long as a doctor to learn your trade, and probably you get as paid as much, believe it or not. Okay, so it's also about not just about where you are or how people look at you, but it's also about the fact that you actually earn probably as much as a professional. So it is a complex issue, and I appreciate in the Middle East it is a difficult one to crack. But for us, it's about really celebrating real good professional practice and raising standards through professional bodies. That's really one avenue to try to reduce this issue around about, well, I don't want to work in vocational education.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
Just to comment on that point from the university's point of view, one of the things that I think would be a huge benefit in the Kurdistan region and in Iraq more widely would be to consider the issue of qualifications frameworks. Because what qualifications frameworks do is to explain the equivalence between professional and vocational qualifications and academic. And at UKH we are starting to do this by getting professional exemptions from some of our academic courses. So for example, in accounting and in finance, we will be seeking exemptions from ACCA, CIMA, and other professional bodies in marketing, the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and so on. And what this does is by using a qualifications framework to show that the professional qualification is actually equivalent to the levels within an academic degree. And this allows people to move from one to the other in a fairly seamless way, and it breaks this artificial divide between academic qualifications and vocational and professional qualifications. We've seen this in the UK, for example, over the last 30 or 40 years, which has really made a huge difference. So, for example, in the UK, if someone has a professional qualification equivalent to an undergraduate degree, but not an undergraduate degree, they can progress to a master's degree because of the concept of equivalence of levels. And I think this will make a huge difference to the Kurdistan region if this could be implemented.
Thank you very much. بەڕێزان لەبەر پابەندبوونی بەڕێزان بەکاتەوە تەنها یەک کۆمنت لێرە وەرەگرم و یەک بەڕێزوەر دەگرم و کۆتایی پێدێنین لەبەرەوەی بەڕێزانە بێ بگەڕێنەوە مەتار. پرسیارێک هەیە ئایا تەنها لە ڕێگەی پرۆگرامەکانی خوێندن ئاستی توانا و کارامەیی و ئینتیمای نیشتمانی و قوتابیان بەرز بکرێتەوە بەبەستی ئامادەکردن بۆ بازاری کار. There is a question from Mr. Iskander asking, shall we rely only on programs of curriculum or the education programs to enhance the skills, life skills, the citizenship of the students and prepare them for the job market? So I would like to direct this question to Dr. Randall. The floor is yours.
No, skills are only built through practice. So therefore, the classroom has to look very different from the traditional classroom that we generally see in state institutions. It's no longer the lecturer at the podium with the students passively listening. So it has to be a student-centered classroom. The classroom has to be redesigned. Students are working with projects. Students are in the labs. You have to minimize, again, after the polytechnic model, only 30% of the course should be lecture-based. So the more that, as we said before, industry comes into the classroom, industry gives the student commercial projects, real-life projects. Students are working in the labs and trying to resolve some of the issues of Kurdistan. That is how, through that research and development, through those conversations, through the teamwork, through the communication, through the data collection and analysis, it's learning by doing, and that's how they prepare for the real workplace.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, dear panelists, for the valuable contribution. وەکو ئەڵێن ختامها مسك بەڕێزان دێنە کۆتایی پانێڵی حوتەمی دووەمین ڕۆژی کۆڕبەندی دووەمی پەروەردە. زۆر سپاس بۆ ئامادەبوونی هەموو لایەک. Thank you very much. Thank you.